Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into a world that maybe doesn't sound super exciting right off the bat,
Mhm.
claims processing, but stick with us. It's
Yeah,
way more interesting than you might think, and it's actually super important.
absolutely.
You guys have sent in a ton of questions and resources, interview tips, insights from people in the field.
Mhm.
So we're going to dig into all of that today and hopefully uncover some hidden gems.
Yeah. I think what people don't always realize is how crucial claims processing is to the whole insurance ecosystem.
Okay, so true.
It's not just pushing paper. It's really about making sure that when things go wrong, the system works the way it's supposed to.
I like that. It's like the nervous system of insurance.
You got it.
All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. One thing that really jumped out at me from that Indeed article was just how much they emphasized soft skills.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about knowing the technical stuff. They really hammered on attention to detail, communication, analytical thinking.
Right.
Why are those so important in claims processing?
Well, think about it. You're a claims processor, and you get a claim after a car accident. Right there, you've got police reports, you've got witness statements,
Mm,
damage estimates, maybe even medical records. Attention to detail is huge here
yeah,
because you need to be able to spot any inconsistencies. Like, does the damage to the car actually line up with what they said happened in the accident?
right.
Are those medical bills really reasonable for the injuries they're claiming? It's like putting together a puzzle.
Totally.
Every little piece matters.
So you're not just taking things at face value, you're really digging in.
Exactly. You're like a detective, right?
Yeah.
And that's where the analytical thinking kicks in. You're not just checking boxes, you're actually evaluating information, making connections, and then you have to use your judgment
Makes sense.
based on all those pieces of evidence. And then once you've figured it out, you got to be able to communicate that clearly,
Oh, for sure.
both to the person who filed the claim and to your own team.
Okay, that makes total sense. So let's talk about pressure for a second. One of the questions you guys sent in was about handling a really high volume of claims,
Hmm.
especially after like a natural disaster, right?
Yeah.
The sample answer talked about working extra hours after a storm hit. That's dedication.
Yeah.
But seriously, how do you even start to deal with that kind of massive influx of claims?
It's tough. It's all about prioritizing and being super organized.
Yeah,
In a disaster, you get this sudden wave of claims, often with not enough people to handle it.
I bet.
You got to triage, focus on the most urgent one,
Hmm.
first injuries, major damage, and at the same time, you got to keep everything moving. It's super demanding.
I can only imagine. And then, on top of all that, there's always the risk of fraudulent claims.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other layer.
How do you even start to figure out which ones are legit and which ones are, well, let's just say less than honest?
You definitely need a healthy dose of skepticism, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But you can't jump to conclusions. You have to approach each claim with an open mind, but also keep an eye out for those red flags. So let's say you've got a car accident claim, and the damage just seems way too much
Hmm.
based on the accident report. That might mean you need to dig a little deeper.
Makes sense.
Or maybe you're reading through the statement from the person making the claim, and the details just aren't adding up. Something feels off.
So you're walking this fine line between being skeptical,
Yes.
but also being fair.
Exactly. You're trying to protect the company from fraud, of course, but you also have to make sure that the people with legitimate claims get what they're entitled to.
It's like a balancing act.
It is. You need those analytical skills, you need experience, and honestly, you need a strong moral compass too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And speaking of being ethical, I've got to imagine one of the toughest parts of this job is dealing with rejected claims. Nobody likes to get bad news. How do you handle those tough conversations?
Empathy is crucial. You always have to remember that you're dealing with people who are probably stressed out, they're frustrated,
Right.
maybe even in a really tough financial spot. Clear communication is super important.
Yeah.
Explain the reasons for denying the claim in plain English. Avoid all that insurance jargon
Hmm.
and just be patient. Be patient with their questions.
And the sample answer actually mentioned offering alternative solutions whenever you can. So it's not just about saying no, it's about trying to find a way to
Yeah.
help, even if it's not the outcome they were hoping for.
Exactly. Maybe there's a different kind of coverage that applies, or maybe there are resources out there that can help them. Even if you can't say yes to the claim as is, you can still offer some support and guidance. Sometimes just knowing that someone's there to listen and understands their situation can make all the difference.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's not just about processing those claims, it's about that human connection, especially when someone is going through something tough.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the human side of things, but let's not forget about the tech side. One of the questions you guys sent in was about software used in previous roles. So what are some of the must-have tools for a claims processor these days?
Well, the specific software can really vary. Depends on the company and the types of claims they handle. But a couple of common ones that popped up in one of the sample answers were Claims Center and Claims Connect.
Okay.
Those are pretty comprehensive platforms that help manage that whole claims process from like intake all the way to settlement. They streamline workflows, automate tasks, and can even flag potential issues.
So it's not just about being good with numbers. You got to be tech savvy too. What kinds of skills are important on the tech side of things?
Yeah, it's less about coding and more about understanding how those systems work and how to use them efficiently. Being comfortable navigating databases, generating reports, troubleshooting basic technical issues.
Hmm.
And as technology changes, you got to be adaptable and willing to learn new systems.
And speaking of evolving technology, AI is making its way into just about every industry these days. How is artificial intelligence changing the game in claims processing?
It's having a huge impact, especially in fraud detection. AI algorithms can analyze massive amounts of data, to identify patterns and anomalies that humans might miss.
Wow.
They can find inconsistencies in the claims data flag, suspicious activity, even predict the likelihood of fraud.
That's pretty incredible. So it sounds like AI is becoming a valuable tool for claims processors, but it's not replacing human judgment completely, right?
Right. AI can help automate certain tasks and point out those red flags, but it's still up to the human claims processor to investigate, gather the evidence and make that final decision.
Okay.
That human element, the critical thinking and empathy we talked about, those are still essential.
That's reassuring to hear.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the skills, the tech, the challenges, but let's zoom out for a second. Why should someone even care about claims processing? What's the bigger picture here?
Think about it. Insurance is all about managing risk, and claims are where the rubber meets the road. When something unexpected happens, a car accident, a house fire, a medical emergency, it's the claims process that helps people get back on their feet financially.
Hmm.
It helps them restore that sense of security and stability when things feel out of control.
Yeah, you're right. I never thought of it that way. Claims processors are kind of like the unsung heroes of the insurance world.
Yeah, I think so.
They make sure that the promises made in those policies are kept.
Exactly. And that's a pretty important role, wouldn't you say? It's not just about the numbers, it's about helping people when they need it most.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, for someone who's thinking about a career in claims processing, what would you say are the most important qualities to develop?
Aside from those technical skills and attention to detail, I'd say resilience. You're going to be dealing with people who are going through tough times and you won't always have the answers they want.
Right.
You have to
Yeah.
be able to handle those difficult conversations with empathy and professionalism, even when you're under pressure.
And I imagine a good dose of curiosity wouldn't hurt either.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. The best claims processors are always learning, asking questions, and digging deeper to understand each case.
great advice. Now, I have to ask, what was one of the most interesting or challenging claims you've personally handled?
Let me see. I remember one case involving a house fire. The homeowner said a faulty appliance had started it, but something about the story just felt off.
Ooh, this sounds intriguing. What tipped you off?
Well, the timeline they gave just didn't match up with what the fire investigator found. Plus, there were some weird things in their insurance history that raised some red flags. Turned out they had filed similar claims with other insurance companies in the past.
Wow, that's a classic example of the detective work involved.
Right.
So what happened?
After a lot of investigating, working with the fire investigator reviewing all the evidence, we uncovered a pattern of intentional fires. It was a long process, but we were able to protect the company from fraud.
That's a great example of how those analytical skills and attention to detail really make a difference. It shows how important that skepticism is, like you were talking about earlier.
For sure, you can't just take everything at face value. You got to dig deeper, ask the tough questions, and follow where the evidence leads.
So for anyone listening who's thinking about jumping into the world of claims processing, what's one piece of advice you'd give them?
I'd say don't be afraid of the challenge. It's a demanding field, but it's also super rewarding. You get to use your brain, you get to help people, and you're always learning and growing. Who knows, you might even solve a mystery or two along the way.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's not just a job, it's a career where you can really make a difference. And with technology changing so fast, I bet there are tons of new challenges and opportunities all the time.
Oh, absolutely. The claims world is always evolving, so you got to be adaptable and ready to pick up new skills.
So we've talked about the skills, the challenges, the tech, even the detective work involved in claims processing. But I think it all comes down to one key question. What makes a great claims processor? Not just good, but truly great. What sets someone apart in this field?
That's a good question.
Right.
I think beyond all those technical skills, it's that ability to balance empathy with skepticism. You got to connect with people who are going through tough times, but at the same time, you have to keep a lookout for anything that seems off. It's a tricky balance for sure.
So you're saying it's not enough to just follow the rules. You got to be able to see those nuances, the gray areas.
Yeah, every claim is different. Every situation has its own wrinkles. A really good claims processor can look beyond that paperwork and see the human side of the story. They can be an advocate for the policyholder, but also make sure the whole system stays fair.
And with AI becoming such a big part of things, that human element is going to become even more important, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. As machines get better at handling data and spotting patterns, the role of the claims processor is going to shift, I think. More focus on those complex decisions, communicating clearly, building trust with people.
So it's almost like AI will free up claims processors to focus on the things machines can't do.
Hmm.
Empathy, critical thinking, problem solving.
Exactly. It's all about using tech to make humans better, not replace them.
This has been a fascinating deep dive.
Yeah.
I got to admit, I thought claims processing was all about paperwork and procedures, but it's so much more than that. It's a field that needs a unique mix of skills,
Mm.
a sharp mind, and a big heart.
Well said. I've really enjoyed sharing these insights with you. And remember, whether you're thinking about a career in claims processing or just curious about how it all works, knowing this stuff can help you navigate the insurance world with more confidence.
Okay, so let's wrap things up with one final thought for our listeners. As technology keeps changing, what advice would you give to someone who wants to not just survive, but thrive in the world of claims processing?
Never stop learning. Embrace those new technologies. Stay curious about the industry and keep honing those essential soft skills. The claims world is always evolving, so being adaptable, being empathetic, and always learning, those are the keys to success.
That's fantastic advice. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and to all of you listening, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another exciting exploration.